Welcome back to another episode of the Goonery. Me and Brandon here again. It's been a very up and down few weeks for our sports teams here. Our baseball teams were riding the highest of highs, and the football team that we just so happen to cheer for, Chicago Bears, is the laughing stock of the NFL right now, I would say.
I mean, how else can you put it just from the performance that we witnessed? And just, I'm not sure if I have recovered from it fully, but we're going to talk more about that going forward.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing with the Bears at this point is that I'm not even upset that they lost because I mean the Browns are a top tier team in the NFL in my opinion. I think that they come out of the AFC, but it's just the fact that it's the same shit with this organization time and time again. You have a head coach who is seemingly incompetent and it's just confirmed that he was carried to a coach of the year by Vic Fangio. And you have a front office in Ryan Pace who just has a boatload of ridiculous contracts, whether it's Jimmy Graham, who made $100,000 per snap he was on the field this past weekend, or Nick Foles riding the bench. It's just in the offensive line that they've built. There's a lot of blame to be thrown around. I think it starts up top with Pace, but I mean, I think Nagy's lost the team and he's here for the rest of the year.
So I want to start this because I have a lot to say. But I'm going to start off with something that's relatively controversial, but is also something that we have discussed on the show on a couple of occasions. I'm right now in week 3. This may be an overreaction, but I wouldn't be a fan if I didn't overreact. So week 3, I'm saying Mitch Trubisky wasn't your fault. I'm going out on a limb, maybe not to a lot of people, but maybe to some. I'm going out on a limb and saying it was not Mitch Trubisky's fault. Now, granted, we really don't know the kind of quarterback Mitch Trubisky is because he was under Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is a coach for himself. You can tell by the way he coaches his quarterbacks, and this falls on Trubisky or Nick Foles or whomever who's been the starting quarterback in his tenure. And you saw it Sunday. And you can make an argument that it was literal sabotage of Justin Fields. And this could be a reaction from, the media pressuring him to start Justin Fields, and he made him like that. And you say, listen, I want him to wait for this reason. The offensive line is bad, so I'm gonna show you how bad the offensive line is. I'm gonna have this guy learn how the NFL is in short order. Well, guess what? Justin Fields looked like he's a guy that his confidence is shaking. He hasn't lost much in his life, and that goes to a lot of the quarterbacks that got drafted in the first round too. Now, the worst thing you could do is have this quarterback's confidence shaken, because regardless of how good he is, and we know he's going to be really, really good, but if you don't have an offensive line that's defending or just holding blocks, because like he barely had time to throw. He had 2.3 seconds to throw when Myles Garrett was coming at him or whomever was coming at him. I cannot stress how big of an organizational failure this is. And this I feel like everything stems from Charles Leno being cut. Granted, not the best starting offensive tackle, but he was serviceable. He was better than that turnstile at 39 years old, Jason Peters, and most hot and cold dude on that offensive line, Jermaine Ifedi. So I have so many issues to address that it's just hard to pinpoint one after another. But the best way to put it is that just from the malpractice that we saw on Sunday, this goes back to me saying this back when I had a rant about the Cardinals a couple of months back, that I couldn't be a general manager, because if you cannot surpass 100 yards of offense, you have no business being a head coach on my team. And hell, I'll put out a memo saying to every team, don't hire this dude because he's going to wreck your fucking offense. So there's so many layers. And one thing that before I hand it off to you, so the press conference today, he kind of dodged the question about who's going to call plays going forward. Now, Bears great Olin Kreutz said, considering he did not say anything about who's going to be the guy going forward, guess what? It's going to be Bill Lazor calling plays. But the big problem with that is, yeah, it's cool that Lazor is going to be the guy calling plays. That's so we assume. But at the end of the day, if the Bears have success, they know it's going to be because of Lazor, not Nagy. And Nagy's ego is too damn big to admit that someone is doing a better job with his offense. The thing that he got brought in to do and to improve, that he couldn't do it. And we saw it in the games last season that Lazor was doing miles away better than Nagy. But here we are, the ego getting away of what the team is deserving and what is best for the team. And that's going to be the undoing of the Bears this season. And hopefully that'll lead to a change at head coach.
And it's frustrating to me because you watch the game and obviously Jermaine Ifedi, 39 years old, is not going to match up one-on-one with Myles Garrett. Or not Jermaine Ifedi or 39-year-old Jason Peters, excuse me. I mean, neither of them are going to be able to take Myles Garrett one-on-one. There's no doubt about it. And something that stood out to me in the first press conference from Nagy this week was when he went into it, basically said, like, did you guys have a plan to stop Myles Garrett? He says, well, obviously you have a plan, but when you have a player of that caliber, things are always going to be different in the game. And or something along those lines. But don't you think after he has, what did he have? 2.5 sacks in the first two drives? Don't you think that, maybe you make some scheme adjustments, you let Justin Fields roll out in the pocket a little bit, move, use his legs that he can use, because that offensive line gave him absolutely no time at all. And it looked like the exact same offense that you'd be running with Andy Dalton out there. And Andy Dalton probably would have gotten sacked 3-4 more times if you were not Justin Fields out there. And it just, you saw it coming from a mile away. That's the worst part of it, in my opinion. You knew coming into it that Nagy was not going to let Fields loose because he doesn't think he's ready, or at least that's the way it comes off in the media. And it's frustrating to watch. It's frustrating to watch. They're not using their pieces the right way. Allen Robinson's going to walk. Not sure if you saw his press conference. Jimmy Graham's upset. And I don't even know where to begin, because the Bears aren't firing Nagy in the middle of the year. I guess at this point you just kind of look forward into the future for a new GM at the end of this year when Pace is out. And Pace will probably buy himself one more head coach because they drafted Fields, if we're being completely honest. So you're almost entering the head coaching carousel at this point for the end of the year. And would anyone want to come coach the Bears? I don't know.
I think the Bears are an attractive job only because I think for professionals around the league, I think they see the glaring issue for the Bears. And I think it's the power structure that is bringing in the personnel, which starts at Ryan Pace. When Ryan Pace goes, I think everything is going to change. It's just a matter of if there's going to be a GM that's going to come in that has going to have a level of competency to not give over the hill guys big contracts. That's the biggest thing of them all. And we praised Ryan Pace when he traded up for Justin Fields. We praised him when he traded up for Tevin Jenkins. But at the same time, the issue is that I don't feel like there is enough of doing the homework, because if you had known that Tevin Jenkins had troubles with his back, that I'm not gonna say the pick wasn't going to be made, but you could have Charles Leno come back for one more year, and then you hand over the reins. Now you're stuck in a position where you have a guy who could barely move out there, and he may be as big as a Mack truck, but the dude can't defend nobody because he has no move in his legs.
The dude was fly fishing. The dude was fly fishing when he got the call from the Bears to come up and coach. He wasn't even prepared to play.
That's the worst part, because regardless if this guy has a Hall of Fame resume, regardless if this guy was one of the anchors for the Eagles offense for all of his years, guess what? I don't know if I'm trusting an offensive lineman at 39 years old where you got guys that are quicker and faster now. It just doesn't work that way. And one of the most embarrassing things that I heard was Kevin Stefanski said that the defense was shocked of how it was the same thing over and over and over again. I would say that is probably a top three most embarrassing thing that could be said about your coaching ability, that you are so predictable that the defense is just chomping at the bit for you to get back on offense. And like how do you get back from that? And also with the defense, we talked about the defense week 1, and we said it was going to be a problem. And let's call what it is. The defense has been playing that ass off for the past 2 weeks.
Mm.
And it's a damn shame that it's being wasted on a head coach who is he was brought here to be a genius. He was brought here to change the offense, change the dynamic of the Chicago Bears and what they've been lacking for literally all their damn history. This is one of the most I don't think I've been through a lot of embarrassing moments as Bears fans. I watched them get smacked on Sunday night by the Packers numerous of times, but I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed to be a Bears fan than I was this past Sunday, and that is not hyperbole whatsoever.
Yeah, and I was at home this past weekend, so I watched the first half on TV, and then I listened to the radio the second half driving back down to school. And Jeff Joniak, the Bears play-by-play radio announcer, I've never heard him like audibly upset and sounding pissed off on the radio. I mean, he's as good as they come, consummate professional. He sounded legitimately pissed at Matt Nagy, and when you have your radio broadcasters like calling it out, that's got to be an eye opener for the franchise. And I know that Nagy can say how many times, however X amount of times, he needs to keep himself accountable. It's my problem. The scheme isn't working. Blah blah blah. Until something changes, it's still all on his shoulders. And another thing I was happy to see was Greg Olson calling out the Bears and during the broadcast. That's a guy who should have never left the Bears. But that's a different argument to begin with. Mm-hmm. But it's been awesome all week. Just the entire national media circuit, eyes on the Bears, being a circus now. And I don't see things changing this year, and reportedly Nagy's on the hot seat if they lose to Detroit this week. But the Bears have never fired someone in season. What makes you think that at 98 years old or whatever it is, Virginia McCaskey's going to decide, you know what, the Bears need to fire Matt Nagy? Because she doesn't. It's all the way up with the ownership. That's where it all stems from.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. I'm not gonna sit here and say the NFC is wide open, but if you want to make a change to change the culture at this point in the season, you do it. Because at the end of the day, I don't give a damn what anyone says. Was Mitch Trubisky drafted where he was supposed to? A lot of people say yes, a lot of people say no because of how he played or whatever. But he was drafted in the right position. Now, he got ruined. He's not on a team anymore. And I think if I am among the higher ups with the Chicago Bears, I'm saying the hell with this. This is not happening again. Not on my watch. If there is a constant thing that is happening with quarterbacks that are young and drafted to the Bears, there is a main culprit is that head coach, is that GM. So what are they going to do about it? If they want to shift the foundation of this organization, they have to do it now, especially if you lose to the Lions. And I'm not saying the Lions are a bad team. They've been competing every single week this season so far. So losing to them is not as bad, but you can't afford it. You cannot afford to lose to them. So let's just say the Bears lose. And let's say they lose by, 7 points or go into double digits. You have no choice. You have no choice. Especially if the offense doesn't put up points, you have no choice. Because I'm not saying this is a playoff team. I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl team. But guess what? A quarterback of Justin Fields' stature can make a hell of a difference, especially with how the defense has been playing. So if things are still not happening, you have to make a change. If not, then they're sending a clear message to the fans that we simply don't give a shit. And we're just going to let us this simmer in mediocrity for as long as we are allowed time on the earth. And that's the worst part of it all.
Yeah. And speaking of fan service, reports came out yesterday that the Bears had purchased Arlington Racetrack up in Arlington Heights, about 30 miles north of Soldier Field. And granted, Soldier Field is a complete fucking dump, and it's probably the worst stadium in all of the NFL, for being completely honest. You know that this deal's probably been done for a little bit, and they waited until everyone was pissed off at the organization to slip this one out. You know that that's just fan service at this point, and I don't know where it ends with Matt Nagy. I just know it's not a happy ending like we all thought it would be.
Oh, and going back to the stadium thing. Listen, if they want to put some asses in some seats, you better change the dynamic of the organization quick and fast, because you could have a grand open of the stadium and nobody's gonna be there because no one wants to see a crappy product. So pick your poison.
Yeah. So moving on to football, it's been a little bit more exciting for us this year. Just college football in general. I mean, Michigan Wolverines, your Wolverines look like the Wolverines have always been projected to be. I mean, like how Harbaugh has them this year, they just look like a completely different team than the last 2 years. And the Big Ten's wide open, if we're being completely honest.
100%.
Obviously, Penn State, Iowa, both top 5 teams right now. Both very good teams. Ohio State coming in at, I believe, 11 now, and Michigan at 14. Big Ten's is wide open as it's been in years. Ohio State looks vulnerable. Obviously, they lost. They lost the one game, but this is the first year, in my opinion, since the inception of the college football playoff that you really don't know where it's going to go after Alabama at this point at the top. I mean, I think Alabama and Georgia, in my opinion, clear cut above everyone else, but Alabama is just that much better than Georgia still, in my opinion. And Clemson's a nobody, 2-2, ranked 25 somehow, just out of respect. I know that I know you're a big fan of Clemson, Brandon.
Oh, listen, I don't want to offend anybody of Clemson. I have family members that are Clemson fans. If they stumble upon this video, they might give me a talking to or whatever. So I don't want to get on their bad side, but it's the head coach. I genuinely have a very strong dislike for Dabo Swinney. And the fact that this is their undoing, I can only sit back and enjoy, but like, you know what? Sucks for you. Sucks for you. You want to talk all this hot stuff all this time, and granted, you had all the talent given to you in the world, and you did good things with it. All power to you. Congratulations. But guess what? The run is over. The run is over. Unless you get a quarterback of the stature of Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, the journey is over. So it it sucks. It sucks for Clemson, but it doesn't suck for Dabo Swinney, because this is going to be the trend going forward. They're going to keep losing games, and they're going to fall short season after season after season. And he's going to live up to his promise that he's going to leave coaching when college athletes got paid. And I'm still waiting for him to fulfill that prophecy. So yeah, if Clemson wants to keep losing and Swinney could be out the door sooner, I'm down for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Dabo will ever leave Clemson. I think he has a job for life at Clemson, no matter how bad they get, until Nick Saban retires and he goes to Alabama. I think that's how the Dabo Swinney story ultimately ends. But I mean, it's just, in my opinion, this year in college football, it's actually, early season games have been exciting from the start this year, just because you're seeing big teams lose. I mean, you have a top 5 of Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa. That you said that to someone, if you were to say that to someone 4 weeks ago, everyone would call you an absolute liar. And it's a good thing for college football. I really do think it's a good thing for college football that you're kind of starting to see new people shuffle in to the top. But one thing that stood out to me so far is Notre Dame might be the worst 4-0 top 10 team I've ever watched. And if they beat Cincinnati this week, it's feasible for them, like believable, that they will end up going undefeated and make the playoff.
So this stretch came up, and I was like, they're going to lose at least one game. They have to. Mm-hmm. I think I chose Cincinnati, but I was also leaning towards Wisconsin. And then we saw Wisconsin play, and we saw Graham Mertz play. And you're just like, I don't think there'd been a lot of teams with that quarterback playing the Big Ten. So Notre Dame, I've always said this every year. They trick the league. They will run through their schedule. Not easy, by the way. They'll never be easy with them. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter who's the personnel around. They will always make the games more difficult than they have to be. So And we see the same thing this year. So it's like, all right, they can beat Cincinnati, probably a close game because Cincinnati's a really good football team, and then they're gonna keep going forward, winning games by the skin of their teeth, and then they get into the playoffs and get smacked in the playoffs. And regardless of them going undefeated and running through whomever, it's just annoying to me knowing that they have wasted our time on so many occasions that they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to lose to either Alabama or Georgia or even Oregon if the cards fall in a certain way. You know, they will deserve to be there, but it's just a matter of, do we want to see them get there and waste our time again? And truthfully, the answer is no. So listen, I don't like Notre Dame anyway, but I'm rooting like hell for Cincinnati to just completely knock them off, because if they lose once, it's done. It's over. Especially to one of these lower teams, because their stretch is about to end. If they beat Cincinnati, lose to somebody else, they're done for. So I'd rather them just get the loss out the way and just we go on with our lives, and hopefully a team can just nail down that three and four spot. They can nail it down.
Mhm. So if the season ended or not, if the season ended tomorrow, if you had to guess today what the college football playoff would look like with the little bit of the season we've seen so far, what's yours looking like? Because mine, I have Alabama, Georgia as the for sure two, in my opinion. I think that they're going to both go into the SEC championship game undefeated. One of them's going to lose, obviously, and both of them will get in, I think. No problem. I don't think anyone will debate that. The SEC, by far and away, the best conference in college football.
Yep.
And then if you go down the list, Oregon's the only undefeated team left in the Pac-12, but I mean, it's the Pac-12, so obviously some weird shit's going to end up happening at 11:30 on a Saturday where Oregon is losing by 2 to Oregon State and everyone's on the edge of their seat. I still think Oregon gets into the playoffs, so I think that's my top three. And after that, I'm leaning Iowa. I think it finally might be the year that Iowa gets in there. I mean, they've always flirted with it. It's a big week, or next week is a big week for them, because next week you have Penn State and Iowa, and at that point you really get to you'll get to see who the true powerhouse is there in the Big Ten. And I'm still not sleeping on Michigan at this point. Their offense looks dynamic. Like, I mean, you've probably watched more Michigan than I have this year, but they've looked good. They look legitimately good. Like Harbaugh finally broke through to these guys. Obviously, this Rutgers game this past week, obviously a little bit of a hindrance, but I don't think Rutgers is a bad team though, by any means, which is kind of crazy to say.
Right. Now, so to your first question about what the four will be, I'm leaning to this, going from 1 to 4. I'm going Alabama, Oregon, Penn State, Georgia.
Okay.
And Penn State, I think, will sneak in because there's a lot of parity this year. So I don't know who will come out of nowhere, because no one thinks Oklahoma's going undefeated. Spencer Rattler's the quarterback, and he showed us that he is not that guy.
He sucks.
He sucks.
You had Oklahoma fans chanting the backup quarterback's name last week. Spencer Rattler had the highest Heisman odds of anyone at the start of the year.
Yeah, listen, he isn't good, and someone's going to take them down. Someone's going to do it. I don't know who, but someone's going to take them down. So that's my 4. Now let's go to Michigan. Michigan, to me, is a team that I don't know how to feel about them, and most of it is because I don't know what their offensive identity is. And we saw through the first 4 weeks, running game, until they went to that 4th game, and the running game just wasn't good. Mm-hmm. And it's not a knock on Blake Corum or Hassan Haskins. They're both studs. Mm-hmm. They are the best running back duo in college football. And it could be biased, but it also could be true. But
they're not far from the top of that. I'm not gonna argue that with you.
Right. So right now, I'm holding all judgments until we play Wisconsin. Michigan has not won at Wisconsin since 2001. And think about that. Now, granted, Michigan doesn't play Wisconsin every year, but there's been talented teams that go into Wisconsin, but there is something different about that Wisconsin atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard to win there. Now, granted, Penn State did it because Graham Mertz stinks. Now, how much I talk about Graham Mertz and how he's not that good of a quarterback. I am reserving. I can't buy into I was about to say the Bears. I can't buy into Michigan's secondary. Their secondary has been suspect all season, and granted, you don't know because the front four has been amazing this year. They have held down the ship on more times than not. You saw in the Washington game, Ada Hutchinson. He's going to be a top 10 pick. He is nasty, people. I hope people have watched him play football. That man is generational. He is amazing. But not and for this Wisconsin game, I've heard early thoughts that they're going to keep the offense balanced. K. McNamara has to prove he's that guy. He has to, because JJ McCarthy is nipping at his heels, and he was this close to getting that starting job. And that's a testament to both how good they were. Because you see McCarthy has an NFL arm, at least in my opinion. From that one throw he made week one, the man has an NFL arm. Now, with that being said, I will want K to be the guy that they want him to be. The guy has a great arm. He could throw the rock, but he has to do it, and the receivers have to come through. Ronnie Bell's not walking through that door, unfortunately. Dalen Bowe has to step up. Roman Wilson has to step up. Cornelius Johnson has to step up. They have guys with speed, but there's time to utilize that speed and space that Josh Gaddis has been talking about, but he hasn't shown for the past 3 years. Yeah. So this is a very big game. If Michigan comes out with a win in Wisconsin, I'll say this right here. I'll say it right now. The winner of Michigan and Penn State would win the Big Ten.
I'm not going to argue that with you either. I'm not going to. I don't really think there's much of an argument to it, because Ohio State just has not impressed me once this year. Not once. Mm-mm. So, I mean, the Big Ten, in my opinion, is the most interesting race for a conference championship this year by far. I mean, the Big 12 bores me. The SEC, you kind of have an idea of who those top two are going to be. Obviously, Arkansas is there nipping at the heels, but at the end of the day, it's still Arkansas.
They're good. They're good.
I am very much looking forward to Arkansas and Georgia this weekend. Very much looking forward to that game. But we kind of mentioned them earlier, that the fact that they're playing Notre Dame this weekend. Cincinnati gets a win against Notre Dame at this time, top 10, and they end up going undefeated, winning out. Who's to say this isn't the year? It's just with how even it seems to be across the board. Who's to say this isn't the year that you get a group of 5 team in the playoff?
It would be beautiful to see, because I believe they'll be the first American Conference team to make the college football playoff.
They'd be the first.
They'll get round field. Yeah, yes, absolutely, exactly. They'll be. Listen, whether they play Georgia, whether they play Alabama, they're gonna get ran off the field. Mm-hmm. But I think the fact that they're pushing the needle now, that they're going to be the top conference. Because granted, in a couple of years, SEC is going to be running everything. They're getting Texas and Oklahoma. So that leaves everybody else in the dust. Now, if Cincinnati breaks through, I'm telling you, if they beat Notre Dame, there's no one in the American Conference that is that good to knock them off. The only team I can see is Houston. That's it, and that's it. That is it. So I'm low-key rooting for Cincinnati to make a run here. I need to see chaos. That's what makes college football beautiful. Because every year you get chaos. It's never the same thing every year, except for Georgia and Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State. Things are different this year, and it'll be cool to see.
Yeah. So looking ahead at Cincinnati's schedule real quick before we move on, they have Notre Dame this week, who obviously that's going to be their toughest game of the year. UCF could potentially give them some headaches. They have SMU, second to last week of the year. And SMU is a very underrated team, in my opinion.
Yes, they are.
They came out, they were a 9 or 10 point underdog against TCU last week, and they put up 42 on them and beat them on the road, and that's impressive. I mean, Mordecai, their quarterback, the dude has a great arm. Dude has a legit NFL arm. I mean, makes some bad decisions, but he's a gunslinger. So I could see that being some issues. But is this officially going to be the last year of Cincinnati before they're in the Big 12 as well?
I think they're going to be entering the Big 12 the same time Texas and Oklahoma leaves. I have to double check that.
So I think a few years, but regardless, if they ever when the move to the Big 12 happens, maybe we'll see Cincinnati in the playoff. And I think that moving to the Big 12, I think that keeps their head coach. I know they were kind of worried that he would jump to a Power 5 conference team going for a big job.
Mm-hmm.
I know we had kind of talked about him going and coaching at Michigan last year at points when talking you off the ledge with how bad Michigan was last year. But if he moves to the Big 12, obviously it's not the Big 12 of old without Oklahoma and Texas, but that'll keep him around. And I bet Cincinnati will perennially be at the top of the Big 12 as long as he's there.
100%. 100%. And them in Iowa State ain't going nowhere as long as Matt Campbell is around, and West Virginia's over that team that sticks around.
Yeah,
they're still going to be a watchable conference, and they're watchable all the time just for the fact that they played no defense, so they're going to be watchable regardless.
100%. So moving into, we started out the show on a somber note, kind of upset with the Bears, but Brandon, you just had your Cardinals just had one of the craziest runs I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it felt like all season it was me telling you that, like, you know, the Cardinals should probably sell, just don't do what the Cubs have done the past few years and just completely set the franchise back. But then you go and rattle off 17 wins in a row, you clinch a wild card, and you're doing it on the back of Adam Wainwright, who has 17 wins at freaking 39 years old or whatever the hell he is. And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Cardinals and Brewers, not the Pirates, just the Cardinals and Brewers, just because they play the Cubs and those are the teams that Cub fans I know actually hate. Like, they actually hate them. They don't care about the Pirates. But it's just been insane. 17 in a row. That's unbelievable.
So I want people that watch the show to keep this in mind. August 8th. Their playoff chances was at 1.3. September 5th, their playoff chances were 2.3. I cannot understate how amazing this run has been. It got to a point where you thought, as a Cardinals fan, you're living in an alternate universe, because we're not used to having long winning streaks like this where we're coming back and we're dominating games, or we're dominating games with pitching. Listen, I tweeted last night that I'm not a fan of celebrating second wildcard spots, clinching second wildcard spots, because you could be one and done, and that champagne would just be for nothing. You don't waste good champagne. Now, when you come back from where you were in the schedule, they had to jump the Mets, the Reds, the Phillies, the Padres. They had to jump 4 teams to do this, and they did it by knocking off the Reds, knocking off the Padres, knocking off the Mets, sweeping the Brewers at America. I don't know what their new stadium name is. I say Miller Park, that's how I know it is. It's Miller Park to me. They went exactly. They went in there and knocked off everybody. They can lose to the Dodgers. They can get smacked by the Dodgers in that one game playoff. And you know what? I'll say all that turmoil and that big ass rant that I went on a couple of months ago, it was all worth it. It was all worth it. I have never had this much fun watching baseball in a couple of years. I mean, it is, like, granted, I truly believe that the Cardinals get past the Dodgers, that all hell's going to break loose. I just hope it happens. If it happens, then, it's a free fall. So I I couldn't be more proud of this team. And I said we shouldn't rebuild, we should retool. I'm glad that we got little pieces here and there. I'm glad O'Neal and Goldschmidt are batting 2 and 3 because they had just been mashing ever since. I'm like I'm just full of joy for this
Yeah.
team. I couldn't be happier. I could not be happier for this team. And damn it, if we lose to the Dodgers, so be it. We had a great run, but if we beat the Dodgers, let's get this shit on a roll. Let's take this to the World Series. Why not?
I mean, the Cardinals, out of any team in baseball, I mean, obviously it's kind of cliche to say they've rattled off, 17 in a row, but I wouldn't want to play them in a wild card. I mean, I don't care how talented the Dodgers are, but the Cardinals kind of have that team of destiny feel almost right now. Don't want to put a jinx on or anything, but when you go on a 17-game winning streak and come out of just like a phoenix out of the ashes out of nowhere to secure a wild card spot like that, it would also be absolutely hilarious if the Dodgers could win 100 plus games and then play in the wild card and then lose to a, let's say, 90-win Cardinal team at the end of the season. I don't know exactly what they'll be at. I mean, back of my mind, though, you know what I'm holding out hope for? A White Sox Cardinals World Series. Tony versus the Cardinals. I mean, the old
respectfully, if y'all end up beating us, I'll take a hiatus from this podcast. I don't think I want to look at your face afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, too, the White Sox have that team of destiny feel for me in the American League. Obviously, the Sox have not won 17 in a row like the Cardinals have. Like, I wish I had that type of fun with the Sox this year, but with the Sox this year, it's been a combination of having a ton of fun watching them put up 12 runs one day, and then the next day go against their number 5 lefty starter who has a 6 ERA and they get 3 hits and put up 1 run. It's just been constantly that. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they battled through injuries all year. Tonight's starting lineup was the 5th time all year that they've had all of their everyday projected starters in the lineup.
Wow.
5th time, and it's game 158 or 7. Yeah, that's saying something to me. Obviously, the AL Central is by far the worst division of baseball. Let's not get it twisted. The Sox have had this division won since May, if we're being completely honest. They've held double-digit lead since I believe the first week of June or so, and just haven't looked back. But it's just crazy to me as a White Sox fan knowing that I have meaningful playoff baseball in front of me for the first time in back-to-back years in franchise history.
Wow.
The White Sox started in 1901, and this is the first time they've made playoffs in back-to-back seasons in franchise history.
Wow. I did not know that.
Like, obviously, the Sox have had some postseason success in the past. I mean, they won the World Series in 05. They had the early 1900s World Series. And if it wasn't for the cheating scandals, they probably could have gone on to challenge the Yankees for all those years and had all the old school rings. But it's unbelievable that the Sox are actually respected on a national scale now. But in typical White Sox fashion, I wouldn't be surprised if they were swept in 3 games by the Astros. I mean, let's be completely honest. I just have that. I always will have that mindset with the White Sox. But whereas I get why you're considering this Cardinal season a success. I 1000% agree with you. I mean, it's been unbelievable the run they've gone on. But if the Sox don't at least make an ALCS and have a competent showing in the ALCS, I think this season's a failure, in my opinion, because you put your nuts on the table trying to go all in. Brought in Liam Hendricks. You traded Nick Madrigal, who was going to be your second baseman for the next decade, to get Craig Kimbrell, who now seemingly forgot how to pitch because he's not thrown in the 9th inning. You go out and get Ryan Tepera. You get Cesar Hernandez, who obviously he's just a slight upgrade. He has not been great since we've traded for him either. But the biggest thing, you signed a 76-year-old Tony La Russa, who has not managed in 10 years when you let the guy AJ Hinch walk, who's now going to terrorize the White Sox with the Tigers for as long as he wants. You saw what he's done this second half. So It's all in if you're hiring La Russa this year. That's what it comes down to.
Mhm. No, I actually agree with the White Sox season being a failure. I mean, if you really think about it, the American League is wide open. You like that. I think I could confidently say, oh, the team that's going to win the Astros and White Sox series is going to go into the World Series.
Mhm.
I can say that, but can you be confident in saying that? Not really. The Rays are still a really good team. And I think, regardless, I think we're more looking at the sexiest story. Who's like La Russa win a championship 10 years after he won one and then he retired. Or the Astros being the ultimate heels and winning a championship when the crowds come back. Or the Yankees. I mean, if they win a World Series, then everyone's gonna be talking about it, especially because I live in New Jersey and I'm at the block all of them. But regardless, that's gonna be something that everybody's gonna talk about. Now, I can say the same thing about the National League too. If you think about it, like let's be honest about something. The Giants just lost Brandon Belt, and I think with teams like the Giants, of course, you do not win 100 games on accident.
Mhm.
I'm not down at they're not that they're good or anything like that. But who's to say that they can't have a slip up? Because we see teams that have come through the wild card that has been exactly what the name is. They're wild cards. They've been there for a reason, and they raise hell for other teams. The Nationals did it 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So who's to say we can't do it? And granted, I'm hyping myself up, and whenever we record again, and I'm somber, I'll be like, damn it, I'm stupid as hell for saying this shit. But but regardless, this is playoff baseball. Anything can happen. And I always say the best teams in baseball don't always win the World Series. So that's why every year I hold out hope that the Cardinals can make a run. Will they? I don't know, but I am hoping because this would be one of the most fun years I've had in, let's say, 10 years when we won the World Series.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It comes down to in most other the big out of the big four professional sports, I think that the cream typically rises to the top once you get to the playoffs, if we're being completely honest. But then you get to baseball and anything that can go wrong for your team, I expect it to go wrong. And you just have no real gauge on what you think will happen in the playoffs. It's what makes
Yes.
baseball playoffs that much more fun, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
hell, 2011, your Cardinals, 83 game wild card, I believe, right? You went on to win a
Yeah.
World Series. That's who's to say it doesn't happen again? I'm just the next week or so is going to be incredibly fun. You have the Mariners who somehow, some way are still knocking on the door. You had the Blue Jays win again tonight, and they just took a game from the Yankees and just scratching and clawing their way back into it. I'll tell you, if the Blue Jays end up making the playoffs, that is a team I do not want the White Sox to come across. I don't care. They've already played them. They handled them in the season series. I still don't want to see that Blue Jays team.
All I'm saying is if what is the Yankees, what is the Red Sox, I don't care if the Blue Jays on the road. They're gonna beat the brakes off of whomever. Do not, under any circumstances, get them into the playoffs because I see it now. It's going to be a George Springer home run, followed by a Marcus Semien home run, by a Vladimir Guerrero home run, and that's the scary thing about them because literally their entire lineup can do this stuff. So the Yankees better beat them tomorrow, or else there's going to be trouble because regardless, you don't really worry about the Mariners. Mariners are a team that is hot at the moment, and you just don't know. But from a talent standpoint, the Blue Jays, you don't want to see them. And yeah, Yankees got to win tomorrow. That's all I'm going to say. Yankees have to win tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun sprint to the end of the year. And I'm sure next time we record, one of us or both of us will be down in the dumps about something. But
Yeah.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So thank you again if you've made it this far for tuning into the show. Make sure to like, share, subscribe to us on YouTube at the Goonery, and we will see you next time. Thanks again.